Hillsong Creative Podcast, where we hear from creative experts, influencers, dreamers, and doers, what they've learned and what we can learn from their journey as we explore, respond, and create.
Well, welcome to Season 6. I'm so glad to kick it off and to get going on a new season. We've got some exciting stuff planned for you, and I can't wait. My name is Rich Langton, for those of you who don't know me, and I head up our Australian creative team for Hillsong Church. So this podcast, it's for creative teams, it's for creative individuals, and for anyone who wants to join us on the journey of exploring faith and creativity. In this season, we're going to try some new things. Of course, we're going to have some amazing guests and talk about their journey and what they've learned. But as well as that, you've asked us to explore some topics, some other things around creativity, to answer some questions, and we're going to explore some of that this season, and I think you're really going to enjoy what we've come up with. If you have a question or a topic you'd like us to cover, we always love to hear from you. So head over to Apple Podcasts and please give us a review and add in your topic or the thing you'd like us to cover there. I've heard it said that Hillsong Church is the church that never sleeps, and sometimes it feels a little bit like that. We just had Hillsong Conference, but now we're just 2 months away from our Worship and Creative Conference. It's one of our favorite times of year, and I'm really looking forward to the conference. We're putting together a pretty special time. Cass has got some amazing ideas, our team are working hard, and I literally can't wait. So let me encourage you to register for the conference, to be a part of it. We're in Sydney, Australia. It's at our Hills campus, and literally it's been one of those times that you don't want to miss being in the room for. So head over to hillsong.com/WCC, check it out, register, and I can't wait to see you there. Okay, let's get to today's interview. As promised, we've got one of our most requested guests today. In fact, she's not really a guest to us because she's part of the family. Laura Toggs is known for many things. She's a fabulous leader in our church, a pastor, a creative genius. She heads up Young and Free, and she's a key voice to a youth generation. I think you're going to love this interview. It's going to be inspiring because she talks about the journey of really outworking the will of God in her life. She's going to tell her story, and I don't want to tell it for her, so let's just jump straight in. I think you're going to love it.
Well, we're here today with Laura Toggs, also known as Laura Toggs. Thank you for being with us today. Who in our church oversees youth ministry with your husband, Pete.
Yeah.
Also looks after Young and Free, which you are going to tell us about what that is. A lot of other things like Secret Garden.
Yes.
As well as being one of the worship leaders in our church. You used to be our comms oversight. There's about 1 billion things that you do. And today specifically, I'm excited that we get to have you chatting with us. One of my first questions was, can you tell us what Young and Free is? Is it a band? Is it just people that, from our youth ministry? What is it and how did it start?
Well, I think it's all of the above. I think that, yes, we have the music, which is probably most well known. But we've always said right from the outset in our youth ministry, before even Young and Free existed, our youth is a movement of young people. When we got together and it was the right time to create Young and Free, we said, before anything else, this is a movement of young people upon the earth who are living for something greater than themselves.
That's
and of
awesome.
course, that's Jesus. How did it get started?
How did it get started?
I think, our church has existed for over 30 years, well over 30 years now. And a huge part of our values is empowering young people, valuing young people, pushing them forward. And that's always been the case right from the outset. And so for us, it was just a matter of timing. Everybody knows Hillsong United.
Yeah.
And Hillsong United started from our youth ministry. And it just got to the point where they had grown up past the youth ministry and they were out doing incredible things right across the earth. And at that time, Peter and I actually stepped up, became youth pastors, and we really felt like God spoke to us. Maybe the most clearly I've ever heard God speak to me personally. We were at a summer camp, and it was the end of the night, and just something was stirring in my spirit. And at that point, we had literally just taken over as youth pastors right across Australia. And I felt that like, God's doing a new thing, and it's not going to look like anything that's been done before. And I felt that. And then Judah Smith actually was preaching at our youth ministry, at our summer camp that night, and he at the end of the night, he just prophesied those exact words.
Wow.
God is doing a new thing. And he just kept on saying it over and over and over again. And it was just confirmation in my spirit. And at that exact time, God was also speaking to my dad, who
That's
of course
cool.
is, our senior pastor and the founder of Hillsong Church, Brian Houston. And he just felt the same thing as well. Like it's the right time to bring through a new movement of praise and worship from young people in our church. And then it just became a journey of just going, okay, well, who are the people? Who are the people who are leading worship? Who are our songwriters? Who are our next generation of producers? And what is this sound? What is the sound that we bring? And it was a journey. We probably took about 12 months just exploring and getting to know our young people at a deeper and more personal level. And I think more than that as well, we just really wanted to form an identity for this generation of young people in our church. And that's where Young and Free, the name, came from.
Yep.
Because we wanted to make a statement that young people living in freedom, not freedom to do whatever they want whenever they want, but freedom that's found only in Jesus. And
that's awesome.
So that's our message.
And I've heard you speak a fair bit. A lot of the Young and Free songs, there's worship, but there's also a lot of the praise songs.
Yes.
And I know you had like a personal revelation about joy. How did you communicate that? And then how has that taken expression throughout the Young and Free team?
Yeah, well, again, as we were trying to work out what is our sound, what is that point of difference for Young and Free, because I think it's really important to know that and establish that really early on.
Yeah.
And to have, we obviously have different expressions in our church. So we have Hillsong Worship, which has been, our congregational worship that has existed right from the beginning.
Yeah.
And we have Hillsong United. And so Young and Free was like, okay, we need to form a sound. And for me, I was like, okay, you can listen to the radio and get all sorts of references. And we were doing those sorts of things. But for me, it's more important that we actually have an objective.
Yep.
And at the time in our youth, I just noticed a little trend creeping in of just a little bit like of kind of an intensity in our youth programs. And I said to Pete, you know what? Our youth has always been uplifting, joyful, fun. And we've always had the objective that young people should come in one way and leave out feeling 1,000 times better. That's always been the heartbeat of our youth ministry. And so that joy kind of thing just really resonated. And I said to our team as we were beginning to write songs and so on, I'm like, songs of joy, songs of joy, songs of joy. We didn't know exactly how that was going to play out, but then Pappas and Aiden wrote Alive.
Yeah.
And that was the catalyst for us. That was the song that just boiled it all down. This is who we are. This is what our sound is. Like I said, it just kind of catapulted us into what we're doing.
It's pretty fun to see what the guys are doing, and they're actually out on a trip now, I think, at the moment. Getting started, what was maybe your biggest personal challenge in, I guess, starting a movement, starting a group of people that are going to create albums? Maybe what was your biggest personal challenge in that?
Personally?
Yeah.
You know what's really interesting is that the obvious answer would be just comparison.
Yeah.
Because I think you can go, whoa, look at this, look at the platform that we're standing upon.
Yeah.
Look at the shoulders that we're standing upon. It's a huge, not only responsibility, but it's also like a lot of pressure.
Yes.
And so I think what I would want to say is that oh my gosh, how could I possibly compare to, Darlene in days gone by, or Ruben or Joel with United, or Brooke these days with worship. But honestly, to begin with, I had so much confidence.
That's awesome.
I had so much confidence that God was in this and on this and breathing. Like it was His breath in it. And the only reason that I can say that is because I just saw before my eyes all these people gather around me, and it felt like it didn't come out of nowhere, but it felt like it came out of nowhere. And I just was like, that could only be God. And just the timing of everything, it was God breathed. I think it was the following years where I really felt challenges creep in.
Right.
Yeah.
And what would those challenges be?
It's interesting. We talked about joy. I think often it's the very thing that you're meant to bring that the enemy attacks.
100%.
And so for me, I felt like joy has constantly been attacked in my life. Right. And I went through a real dark season, and it was really difficult, really, really difficult.
Wow. And you've made it through the other side.
Absolutely.
And actually have some even more authority and things to bring on the other side of that, which is awesome. Could we talk for a minute about the balance of it all? Because I know you live a very large life. You have a few kids, you travel.
A few. That sounds like 5.
How many children do you have?
I have 2 kids and 1 on the way, so 3, which is very exciting.
So then life on the road, you have made a decision maybe not to go on all of the trips and to kind of manage. You speak at church, you lead worship at church. What would be something that you would maybe say to some of our listeners that maybe find themselves pulled in a lot of different directions? I feel like you've had to assess work-life ministry balance quite well.
Yeah. I think I've learned that wherever I am in the moment is where I need to be. Being present wherever I am is really important. So for me, when I'm at home and I'm with my kids, I am mum, and that's what I'm doing. And then when I step foot in the office, I'm here, I'm working. And if I'm traveling, that's a really interesting thing, because I think you just have that, like, that thing within you, that wrestle within you, like, am I doing the right thing? Am I not? And that's where I've really learned to trust my intuition, using wisdom, but that real gut instinct. And so when we're, like you said, if I'm choosing to be on that trip, then I'm going to be there, and I'm not going to feel guilty about it.
Awesome. And
that set me free, really. And I find that when I'm leaving, like if I'm on the plane, I feel a little bit like, that tug towards home. But as soon as I step foot on the ground, I'm there. And I have the greatest time. And, obviously we're so blessed these days. I remember when I was a kid, my parents traveled a lot. So this is kind of normal for me as well. But, I would send a fax.
Oh, yes. Facsimiles.
A fax to a hotel.
Yes.
And then I would wait for my parents to fax me back.
That's cool.
Or we would have to coordinate, a phone call. Yeah. And that's how you kept in touch with home. But now it's just so easy.
Thank God for FaceTime.
And we have FaceTime, and we leave videos for one another. And Willow, my 8-year-old, she texts, she will take one of our phones and she'll text, and it's just so different now. And so we're so blessed that we can keep in touch. So and then when I know that I'm going home to them, I get very anxious. I'm like, I can't get home to them fast enough. But I think the key to just doing many things is just being 100% present wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And not being torn in those different directions.
And have you stumbled into that? Like, what do you do when you maybe realize you've got it wrong? Do you make an adjustment?
Yeah. So for me, that's kind of how I live naturally anyway. I like to just kind of try things, see how they're going, and then make adjustments along the way. And we have had to make adjustments. And that's why, for example, this year I've chosen to be home more than I was in previous years. And that adjustment was made because I realized that last year there were things that were impacting me personally, our family, and I was like, okay, we need to make a little change here. And we've done that, and it's been really rewarding, really fruitful. And again, that's just, I think, partnering with the Holy Spirit.
Yep.
And listening to the Holy Spirit and letting him guide you in your decisions. But then I think as well, just forgiving yourself for when you get it wrong is really key as well. Because otherwise, especially women, working wives and mothers and so on, we can just be tough on ourselves.
Yep.
And so just learning to go, okay, the reason that you've got here is because you're actually trying something.
Yes.
That's awesome. You're
100%.
doing something with your life. That's awesome. And so just not being so hard on yourself, forgive yourself for when you get it wrong, and then making those adjustments.
That's so good.
Yeah.
I love that. We'll switch gears a little bit. Still talking about Young and Free, but with some of the reach and influence that Young and Free have had, obviously there's been Grammy nominations and sort of things. First thing, could you ever have imagined that when you started to lead Young and Free? And then what have been, you've also done the schools tours and different things like that. As the influence has grown, how has it affected you and your leadership of kind of where to steer things next?
Well, firstly, I think, when it comes to accolades, whatever that they may be, for example, the Grammy nomination, I feel like you dream about that in your wildest dreams, but don't actually think that it's going to happen. Yeah. And I think for me, I've grown up in a church that has had the grace and breath of God over it, where we have seen incredible things, and yet still it amazes me when things like that happen. I remember actually when we first found out that we were nominated for a Grammy, to be honest, I was excited, but I felt guilty.
Wow.
I felt guilty because I was like, we don't deserve this. What I loved was the first person to congratulate me and just be genuinely so excited was my brother Joel.
That's awesome.
And he genuinely was just so stoked, out of his mind. Yeah. And to me, it just shows me the person that he is.
Totally.
Because he's gone, well before, and he is an incredible songwriter, and I think he just forged the way, for Young and Free. And yet he hasn't had a Grammy nomination. So for him to actually show that was, I think, really beautiful and testament to him. Yeah, but it is really interesting because one moment you will be at the Grammys and I'm not sitting there and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's Beyonce. And then you come home and you're like, we live in the suburbs and we just go to our local mall. And as a youth ministry, I think one of the most impactful things that we've done over the last couple of years out of everything that we've done is create our schools tour, where we take our team, of youth pastors, leaders, our worship team, and we try and hit as many schools in our areas as we can. And we're there and we're in the school
What
hall.
Does that look like? Is that like a gymnasium sort of setup? It's pretty grassroots, hey?
Absolutely grassroots. Yeah,
cool.
So very, very, look, we started this out of nothing. So we don't have budget. We don't have impressive production, none of that stuff. No cool lighting.
I love that.
It's not there. But the main thing is that we want young people to know that this is not about us. This is about us placing value upon you as an individual. We want you to know that you're important and that you're seen, you're worthy, and that this message that we carry, Young and Free, this is for you as well. What's so beautiful is when you're there and you're face to face with these young people and you're really engaging in these deep and meaningful conversations, you realize how open they are. They're so open. They are so desperate for truth. And that's been the biggest, most rewarding thing to experience. And, Pete or whoever, one of our youth pastors will preach a message and you can look around and you can see tears streaming down young people's faces because they're hearing the truth. Their soul is being validated in the most beautiful way. And it's like they're hearing it for the very first time. And so, unreal.
We'll get right back to the episode, brought to you by our Hillsong Worship and Creative Conference. It's for every kind of creative, whether you're a musician, singer, a graphic designer, architect, an audio engineer, or video editor. It's a place for the artists of the church to gather together, to worship, to be inspired and refreshed, and to be equipped and trained for your sphere of creativity. Come be a part of everything happening on site, like the exclusive collabs with practical training from our key Hillsong team. The conference has limited spaces, so if you can't make it to Sydney this year, why not join the online conference experience so you don't miss a moment of the main sessions? Find out more details at hillsong.com/WCC. Now, let's get back to the episode.
This is Laura Toggs, and these are my Fantastic Four.
When you think of the word successful, who is the first person that comes to mind and why?
The first person that I just thought of was Melinda Gates, who runs the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And the reason that I thought of her is because I watched her interview with David Letterman 2 nights ago, and I was so inspired by just how much they have achieved in the last 10 to 15 years.
What's something you believe that other people think is insane?
Oh, I love Vegemite. Vegemite is incredible. My favorite time of the day is bedtime. I love going to bed. Everything's done, kids are in bed, have had a great day at work or whatever I've done, and it's time to go to sleep. Recharge, I love holidays. I love going off grid and just having amazing time with my family.
So you have some insanely talented people that you work with, and you lead them very well. What would you say to people that maybe have super talented people on their team, leading, guiding, influencing them without squashing their creativity?
Yeah.
What would be something that you've learned?
I think
you do it very well.
Well, thank you. I feel like I've learned what not to do. And I feel like coming in and kind of treating them like a problem because of their age
Right.
is not the answer.
Yeah.
And I actually heard someone say this and it stuck with me. I've kind of created like a leadership message out of it. But young people are not the problem, they're the provision.
Amazing.
And when you look at it like that, kind of changes your perspective. So yeah, all of us need leading, and people want to be led, and young people want to be led. And so they can put all sorts of fronts up, but at the end of the day, they actually want to be led. Don't police them or drive them in a way that's negative, but on the other extreme as well, don't just kind of sit back and, which I think I've been guilty of as well, just be like, I want you to like me. But all that to say, like, I think what I love about working with even just people a few years younger than I am is that they think so differently.
Yeah.
And there's so much innovation within them. And I think if you recognize that, still while maintaining that leadership position and making sure there's that level of respect and like not like just coming in and like kind of like going, well, I'm the answer. Like, yeah, you might be the provision, but doesn't mean you have all the world answers. So it's that kind of like balance. But I think when you kind of realize that, then gosh, we can do so many incredible, new, exciting things.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Many of our listeners kind of may know already, but you run like a website / movement, I'll let you give expression, called The Secret Garden. Would you like to tell us about that?
I actually picked up my mum's sisterhood book.
Oh, wow.
So it's when she released her sisterhood book, Pete and I were, it was 4 years ago because we were celebrating our 7-year anniversary and we were just going away for a couple of days without the kids, and we got on a plane and I read her book from start to finish, one sitting, and
Wow.
I cried my eyes out. I bawled because I felt like, one, it was so just reminiscent of my childhood and just this whole journey, and it was just so beautifully written, as she does write so well. Also, I felt like God again was just really stirring something within me, and I had thought about doing a blog. I had thought about doing something like that, but it just didn't seem right, and didn't know what would I say. I don't want to just be another voice. I don't want to do fashion. Like, I love fashion, but I don't want to do a blog on fashion. I don't want to do beauty or any of those other things, but like, even though I had interest in those things. And so I'm reading this book and it's all about placing value upon womanhood. And just even for me, being a youth pastor, leading Young and Free, knowing that I have this platform and I am in a position where I get to influence young people, and I have this message of the sisterhood. I have this message within my hand, but I'm not sure that I was really at that point doing much with it. I think it wasn't the right time. Like, I think I couldn't have done it before that moment. But it just felt like all the pieces were coming together. And over the next couple of days, I just got the idea of creating a website, generating content for young women, but not just the same stuff, but hopefully getting beyond what's skin deep. And just kind of going, okay, look, all of the stuff that's external that we see so much of, we have a million images that are projected at us every single day. That's all about what you look like, what you're wearing, which again, all stuff that I love, But what's most important is what's within, and it's inside first and then out. And that's the message of the Secret Garden. And for me, it's just the perfect metaphor, because I think we can put so much time and so much effort, so much energy as young women into the stuff that is seen and is recognized by others, what is noticed by others. But how much do we tend to what's hidden? How much do we pay attention to what's inside? What's the condition of our heart? What are we thinking about? You know, what consumes us when we go to bed at night? What upsets us? What makes us happy? Like, how much are we actually caring for our inner world? And so that's where the Secret Garden came from. And for me, I really felt like this was more than just for the girls who are within the church, because I think we're so blessed. We get this message all the time. Yeah. For me, I felt a real heavy burden for young women who don't get this message. And it's really interesting, because at the time I looked for anything like this, and you would think there would be so much, and there just wasn't. And there's a lot of messages being spoken out, and even positive messages to some extent, but just off, like just a little bit skewed, and you're just like, oh, I get it, like it's close, but it's like it's still a little bit just, you know, off. And so so really intentional about reaching unchurched girls.
That's really cool. And you kind of just started it from scratch.
Yes.
Using volunteers from church.
Yeah.
Using whoever was around.
Yeah.
And the content that you've created is world class.
It, again, was like, I shocked myself. Like, I was not expecting it to kind of like I remember I turned up to a shoot and I was like, wait, hold on. How did we do this?
Yes.
Because we had nothing.
Yeah.
Created it out of nothing. But it's just something that I think when it's a message that resonates with people,
100%.
You don't have to work hard for it. Like you do, but like I had no issue gathering people around me to make it happen. People were on board. So,
and then recently, just this past year,
a
few months ago, you've done what you called the pop-up stores. Do you want to tell us about those?
Yes. So we did. We started doing pop-ups just at our conferences and so on. But because I want it for the girls who don't get this message, I wanted to do it in like a more public kind of space. For Colour Conference this year, we have in Sydney, we have it downtown Sydney. You know, the arena that we have conferences is probably like a 5-10 minute walk from like our major shopping district. And so we hired a pop-up space right on Pitt Street, which is like, again, like it's just like the center of the city. It's a hive of activity at all times. I don't know how we did it again, but like God just provided this space for us and had volunteers who came. We painted the whole place. We made it look beautiful. It was really well done, but it just meant that so many people were curious. They were like, what is this? Yeah. And, you know, we'd have girls who, you know, were on their lunch breaks from work and they were just walking past and they would walk in and we painted these big messages. You were seen, you were worthy, you were loved.
Very cool.
Yeah, you are beautiful. Like just things like that. And they'd come in and they'd be like, what is this? What's going on here? And there was one particular girl who kind of was like, really kind of like, we didn't know what her vibe was. So she was like, okay, you know, is she judging us? Does she think that we're idiots? Like, what does she think? And she asked a couple of questions and we told her about the website and she went back to work and apparently watched every single episode because we film interviews with girls, just talking about real stuff. And we've probably filmed about 20 now. Yeah. And she watched every single one and came back and she had tears streaming down her face and she's just like, I cannot believe something like this exists. Wow. I'm going to tell all my friends about it. Again, came back with a bunch of friends to show her friends. And to me, that I just was like, oh, thank you so much, God, because this is exactly what I wanted. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that story so much.
Yeah.
What is your website?
So it is a website. It's a website. So firstly we film interviews. Yeah. So I'll just pick, at this point it's just been friends. Yeah. Because I just want to keep it just real and it's not like anyone who's particularly well known or, you know, has crazy platforms. It's just like everyday girls that I talk to, and we just talk about real stuff, anything from anxiety to body image. To one of the girls I spoke to, you know, she came to Australia as a refugee, and, you know, she experienced racism. We talked about it. And so we have these just real conversations, and they're really raw. They're not polished at all. We don't do any crazy editing. I'm really, really purposeful, even in our editing, that the apprehension when answering the questions are left in, just to show that it's like, these are not like well-rehearsed answers. Like, these are these girls who are processing these real topics and bringing something that's real to the table. And so it's just, it's really raw. It's really fun. So for me, I'm like, we need to make it aesthetically like magnetic. So I want to like capture girls' attention and go, oh, that looks cool. What is that? So that she's like kind of prompted to make that click, and, you know, and then that click again. And so we make it look really beautiful. And so we do that. Then we have a little online store, which again is just the message. And that, to this point, is actually how we're funding.
Awesome.
The Secret Garden is just, we do some merch, we do T-shirts, and it's not just for the sake of, you know, financing the vision, but it's also just like wearing the message.
Totally.
And again, that prompts so many conversation. Yeah, we've got big dreams for what it could be as well in the future, but
that's awesome.
One step at a time.
That's very cool. I've been to the website and watched most of the videos, and I get so inspired watching them. And I think one of the things that you bring to the table is you have this ability to disarm people. And so every girl that you interview, there's just this sense of vulnerability and authenticity. And I think it's maybe even something that you've learned in your journey of just bringing authenticity to the table. Maybe in closing, can you maybe tell us a little bit about your own journey, and maybe, I guess, any of our audience that might find themselves, you know, a pastor's kid, or even just the journey that you've walked? How have you found your own feet within that, and what would you say to maybe people along the journey?
Well, it has been a journey, and it continues to be a journey. And I think for anyone, no matter what their background is and where they're at in life and how successful they may or may not be, it's always this evolving kind of story and journey of figuring out who you are and what's your place on this earth, and how do you contribute. For me, pastor's daughter, church kid, I think a really, like, genuinely, if I can say this about myself, but genuinely like a good girl. Like, I want good, and I love Jesus, was on a journey of discovering my own relationship with him as a teenager, but really found that genuinely, and took my time to find that and forge that relationship. And then as well, just even forming like, well, what's my place then? Like, I want to serve you, God. Like, what does that look like for me? Knowing that I have all these desires and things that I think that I'm good at. And what I love about God is that I remember as a young girl going, oh, maybe I want to be a fashion stylist, or maybe I want to be a graphic designer and work at a magazine, or I love music. Like, I actually love to sing, and I love forming music. Like, I think that's really cool. And just having all these different things. And then, like, without really pursuing it, like, crazily, like, I feel like God has opened doors. So for me, I'm like, okay, I remember finishing high school and not really knowing what to do next. And I took some time off, and then after 6 months, Dad was like, you need a job. Like, you need to do something. And so he said, why don't you come to church, get some work experience? Just get like a couple of months work experience in different departments, and then you can find out what you like and what you're good at and what to pursue. And I started I was going to do communications for a couple of months. Then I was going to do creative for a couple of months and youth for a couple of months. And I went to communications and ended up staying there for 5 years.
That's awesome.
And in that time, I did art direction and like campaigns and managed all these campaigns. And I look back and I'm like, that's so funny, because I wanted to do graphic design as a kid. And then I had Willow, and I came back, and I knew that time in communications, was done. That other people had risen up. JR had risen up. He was leading the charge while I was on maternity leave, and I felt like he was the right person.
Yeah.
And that was the time that Young and Free was formed.
That's very cool.
And I'm like, wow, now I get to like create this incredible brand, like expression that has so many creative arms.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I'm working with young people.
Yeah.
And again, I'm like, look at God, like he has made all these
He's
things.
woven it all together.
Yeah, and I'm like, whether it's like creating Young and Free merch or working on the albums and crafting the songs with the team or leading worship or whatever, it's just like, wow, God, you're so faithful that you've made this all come together. I think in that journey though, gosh, I just think whenever you're putting yourself out there, it's so vulnerable.
Yes.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think you're putting yourself in front of people or you're creating or, you know, for others it might be like a business proposal or it's like it takes so much courage and vulnerability to put yourself out there. And I really felt the effect of that throughout that process. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize it at the time because you just do it. You're just doing it. But then I was like, oh my gosh, I felt very exposed.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's where all of these like insecurities and all those things, fears and doubts and whatever they are, and it's so common for most people, just creep in and they like they come in and they attack. And so for me, that's been a huge part of my journey, just navigating that. And it's just been a matter of being really honest with myself, honest with the people around me, and using a lot of wisdom and understanding. I've learned so much, and I honestly could talk about it forever, but I don't know that we have the time. But I think you never really arrive. But I think what you do is you learn. Yeah. And so for me, I feel very self-aware at this stage of my life. And I feel like now I know the enemy's devices against me. I know what can set me off and those insecurities off. And I believe in the word of God at the end of the day. I believe what God says about me, and I choose to believe in what he says about me. And I choose to believe in what he's called me to do. And so I'm going to listen to that and I'm going to tune into that. And that's where I'm at right now. And
that's so awesome.
Yeah. And it's honestly the most awesome place to be in because it feels so free.
Yep.
And I think when I remember just getting a little bit of fight in me, like earlier this year, probably actually late last year, I just got this little fight in me to like redeem the girl that I am.
That's
I
awesome.
was like, you know what? I'm not going to be shy and I'm not going to be timid and I'm not going to draw back. That's not who I am. Yep. Like I actually, like soft, tender, gentle, that's all beautiful. And I'll claim that. But timid and insecure and afraid and fragile, I'm not going to be that girl. And so when you get that fight in you, that strength in you, you find that, you just fight for it. And you find that only by like really pressing into the word, I think. So for me, it's just been like falling in love with the word of God. But yeah, I know it's a journey. And I think because of now that awareness, it's like you go, okay, I can recognize that for what it is. And you make those conscious decisions. I'm not going to go down that road. I'm not going to go down that train of thought. Like, no, I'm staying on course.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you for being with us, Laura. We really love and appreciate you. Thank you for your honesty, your vulnerability. You are an inspiration to a lot of people, and we're very, very grateful for you. Hopefully you come back and see us again on the podcast.
Isn't it crazy how when we're seeking to do God's will and we have dreams in our heart, he brings those two together. I love how Laura talked about just not knowing how to pursue her dreams, and yet God brought them to her. And in that, the lesson is to keep seeking him, keep seeking his word, to keep getting that into you and keep allowing the promises of God's word to bring strength and to build character and to see us through times when we can't see a way through. So my encouragement to you would be to do exactly like Laura said, to get into the word, to keep seeking him. And if you can't see a way for your dreams to become a reality, not to give up on those dreams, but to keep seeking Jesus and to keep trusting him for how they're going to come to pass. Laura is such an inspirational person. I'm sure you'll agree from hearing that interview. If you'd like to follow along, you can find her on social media. Laura talked about Young and Free and The Secret Garden. And if you're unfamiliar with the music from Young and Free, then I'd encourage you to go check them out wherever you get your music from. Just search Hillsong Young and Free. It'll be a great addition to your music catalog, and I'm sure it will bring joy, just like Laura talked about. And if you're interested in finding out more about The Secret Garden and all that Laura was talking about, then you can go to thesecretgarden.tv. That's it for today's episode. I hope you've enjoyed it and it's been useful for your journey. If you haven't already, I'd love to take a minute just to encourage you to subscribe. When you do that, you become part of our growing community of creatives who are trying their best to live out their faith through their creativity. So join us anywhere you find your podcasts, subscribe, and then you won't miss out on anything. And I always love to hear from you, so please write us a review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes. It helps with the visibility of the podcast, and it lets us know what you think, what you're enjoying, and where we can go with the podcast in the future. Aside from that, you can write to me on Twitter @RichLangton, and we'll talk to you next time.